Hey, messaging is so important, and there's no one that does it better than today's guest. This is a Weekend Rewind episode I recorded with Dr. JJ Peterson back in 2020 and bringing it to you today. You'll hear more about this episode and JJ in the original intro I did for him, recorded back for the First Time Facilitator podcast. I love this chat. I love JJ. Enjoy the conversation, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Now, one person who knows how important it is to listen and serve your audience and their problems is our guest today. He's also the co-host of one of my favorite podcasts. Now, I mention all of these favorite podcasts, but I'd say that my favorite podcasts are the ones that I tune into each and every week. So these would include Smart Passive Income by Pat Flynn, The Jordan Harbinger Show, The Pivot Podcast with Jenny Blake, and the Building a StoryBrand podcast by Don Miller and Dr. JJ Peterson. So Dr. JJ Peterson is my guest on the show today, and this episode is epic. It's really up there in terms of practical facilitation and marketing advice. Dr. JJ Peterson is the Chief of Teaching and Facilitation at StoryBrand. He is a filmmaker, a storyteller, and passionate about all things art. He's had a very interesting life, as you'll hear him explain, but what he doesn't share in his intro is that he's danced in a Missy Elliot music video. His first acting job was on The West Wing, and he was baptized in a cattle trough while surrounded by Maasai warriors and their cows. I am really geeking out over his book he co-authored with Don Miller. It's called Marketing Made Simple. JJ, it's amazing to have you on the show.
So I'm really excited.
I listen to you and Don every week, and I got to say, I love all of your interviews, but my favorite part of your show is just you and Don having a bit of banter at the beginning.
That's my favorite too, since that's the part that I get to be part of. But it's we just kind of decided early on that we wanted to make it feel like what our office feels like, so it feels like people are in the room with us, and so we literally just sit down and start talking. So
it's really, and you're lucky that you both of you are actually quite comical. You know, it's not too boring people. It's like, wow, I really want to hang out with these people. And honestly, that's the reason why I reached out. I'm like, I want to hang out with JJ. So plus, I mean, this is what you do. So can you please share with our listeners a bit about your story, your career pivots? Because you've had a bit of an interesting career background that's brought you here today.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing because I've been in a lot of different worlds that all felt very disjointed until I came and started working for StoryBrand. And then it genuinely felt like, oh, this all makes sense. It all kind of came together in a really unique way. So my background, really, I started out in undergrad with communication. So I did public relations for a while for a couple international nonprofits. So it involved some marketing and branding and things, but really fundraising and public relations. And then from there, I actually ended up going into, I was a youth pastor for a while. I worked at a big church and then did improv comedy. And I toured around the US and Canada doing improv comedy, and then decided I was done with the touring life and wanted to teach. And so went back and got my master's in study of story, really. And it was called Theology in the Arts. So study of film, television, music, and started teaching communication at one university, and then moved to another university, became dean of students, and kept teaching. And all through that time, I was also doing acting and writing. So I did a lot of stuff kind of just as really a hobby in Hollywood. Like I never really kind of went for it, but did a bunch of random, I was in some music videos, I was in a couple independent films and television, and then ended up actually creating a reality television show with my brothers, which is what you do when you live in LA. And sold that, signed a partnership with a production company, and left teaching to go pursue that, and kind of did that for a little while, created a couple different shows that never actually made it on the air, but just kind of pursued that, did a lot of production work and writing in LA. And it was actually when I was in the process of selling my TV show that I met Donald Miller, who had just started StoryBrand around that time. And what StoryBrand does is it really, a lot of companies are just way too close to their product and service that they don't know how to explain it in such a way that actually gets people engaged. They use a lot of inside language and confuse people. And StoryBrand uses a story framework. We teach people how story works and how then to create a good story for your brand or personality, and then put it in your marketing and messaging. And So it's all kind of based in storytelling and film and all this stuff. So I was intrigued and I came out to StoryBrand as a client. Really, I came out and I was like, let me figure out how to pitch my television show, and just absolutely fell in love with the process. I mean, it was really what I had been thinking about and doing for 20 years, but it was just put in such a concise and easy framework. And I actually, in the very first workshop I was in, I stopped working on my own brand and I started helping the people around me because I just got it so quick. And I would just loved it. And that's really how Don and I kind of started working together. Is he was like, well, would you mind coming back and working with me and helping people, teach people? I'm the only one who teaches this right now. Would you start teaching it with me? And then really just kind of worked with him and our team to continue to build the company. And so now we we work every year with like thousands and thousands of companies all around the world, and get to help them clarify their message with story. And so by the time I got to StoryBrand, I was like, oh, my experience actually doing fundraising and messaging, the improv comedy of just kind of like, thinking on your feet, and then teaching, and my study of story, my master's degree, my PhD study is in communication. My dissertation was in narrative marketing. And it just kind of like all came together in this. I was like, how can I combine film and teaching and communication? And it was like, it's this. And so it was kind of crazy to get to where I am. But now I genuinely feel like my entire life was built up for this.
It absolutely sounds like it. I know Steve Jobs said it's very easy to reconnect the dots looking backwards, but it's hard to project that looking forward. And I guess a lot of people with their careers, they're trying to look for what their dream job is. But that role never existed, right? You sort of created it. Don saw the passion that you had and it just evolved, right?
Yeah. And it really, I think for me, it just always was about taking the next step forward. Even every job I stepped into, I honestly have loved every job I've had. There's never been a job that I've hated, but I always felt like it wasn't the final thing. And so I would kind of step into it and give what I felt like I had to give in that space, and also learn. It was both kind of a give and take where I could learn a ton and I could also use my gifts to help whatever organization I was a part of. But each time I was like, even when I went into comedy, which feels like a dream job for most people, I remember going, I think this is a 3 to 4 year thing. And it was. It really was. And even when I did my first PR, I was working for a company that worked in community development in Central America. And I was like, I love this and my heart is here and I love serving the disenfranchised, but this is probably a 3 to 4 year thing. And it was. But now I genuinely feel like I'm not sure what other job. This might be a stepping stone to something else, but I really at this point, I feel like, no, I've found it. I've been with about 4.5 years now, and it feels like I started yesterday. I love it.
That's amazing. Can you just quickly share your process? It sounds like, I'm in this role for 3 or 4 years. It sounds like you had a mindset of constantly evolving. Like you said, evolving is probably the key word. At the moment, we're all being disrupted. So
Sure.
we're very quickly having to evolve.
Yeah.
What's your advice to people that are getting a bit stuck and, they thought that they had this career for their lives and now their industry has been impacted? I know I've sort of moved it to something that's very current.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
We're all having to evolve very quickly every day. We're sort of, our emotions are going in different places. What's your sort of tip for having that mindset of being agile? I feel like we're all playing some weird improv skit at the moment.
Yes. Oh, for sure. We've never been in this scene before. That's really what's going on. I think Don really has taught me, I studied a lot of story, and then Don and I talk a lot about story. And one of the things that I think was always intrinsic in me is that in any situation I stepped into, I had to ask myself, am I a victim? I really would stop and go and almost always I would say, I'm not a victim here. Whatever situation I was in, and in this situation right now, I feel like we are experiencing where people are placed in the position of victim. But just kind of really quickly, in story, there are really 4 roles that people play that characters can be in a story. There are the victim, the villain, the hero, and the guide. Those are really the four main roles that people play. And what I began to understand about the victim in a story, when you understand story, is the victim. There's never good stories written about a victim, because a victim is not meant to be a permanent position. And in order for the victim to matter in the story, the only reason they matter is to make the hero look good and the villain look bad. That's it. That's the only reason they exist. Now, there can be movies about somebody who started in a victim role and became a hero. Like, that's a transformational journey. But the person who stays the victim the entire time, no good stories are written about them. And so, and the villain is the person who like takes a situation and something bad happens to them and they have to create revenge out of that. So villains take pain and try to revenge and get even with people, and heroes redeem. So heroes redeem the pain and villains revenge the pain. In fact, we see in stories like that villains often have like a scar on them, which literally is a sign in film or a story to say this person has a backstory of pain, like literal physical pain.
Interesting.
And so villains revenge, heroes redeem. And they're about moving forward and overcoming the circumstances. And then ultimately, the guide is really the strongest character in a movie. And the guide is the one that helps the hero win the day. The guide has already won the day. They don't need to prove anything to anybody else. But the guide is there to help the hero win the day. And so I find that when we come into situations like this in particular, that we are in this time, is that, and each of those, the reason those are in stories, the victim, villain, hero, guide, is because every one of those is in us at any given time. Nobody is ever always the hero or always the villain or always a victim. Those all live in us at any given time. And we actually have the ability to choose to step into what role we want to play. So I'm seeing right now in this situation where we have outside circumstances that have been thrust upon us. And that's really the definition of being a victim, right? Something that's out of our control that is kind of thrust upon us. And in that moment, we can choose to play the different roles. We can choose to play the victim. And when you play the victim and you stay in that space, you will never write a good story, ever. You will always stay, because everything about your energy relies on the energy of others. You either need somebody to be a villain to you or a hero to you. And so you're relying on other people to write your story as a victim. And as a villain, which we also see in this situation of people like kind of, okay, I've got pain. Now I'm going to force pain on you. Yeah. That is also a role people are picking up right now. But my favorite thing that I'm seeing in the world is people who are choosing to step into the hero and the guide role. The hero is the one who chooses to transform, who chooses to overcome the situation, who chooses to live outside of, even though the circumstances are happening around them, they're choosing to write a better story. And then the guide is the one that comes along and says, I know I'm still in the situation that's hard, but I'm going to help other people win. And so for me, I really think in all kind of situations, when I'm saying, if I'm frustrated in my job, I stop. I literally have made lists and going, okay, what are the positives? What are the negatives? Or even if I've been in a bad relationship and I've gone, I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim. I am choosing to be in this situation, or I can choose to leave. So if I choose to stay, what role am I going to begin playing? Because if I choose to stay and be bitter, I become the villain. But if I choose to stay and write a better story in that space for me, I become the hero. And if I choose to stay and help other people write a better story, I become the guide. But even now, I find myself going, okay, there's outside circumstances, and I can easily play the victim. It would be so easy for me to just sit and binge eat and watch Netflix, right? Like, well, my control. I have no ability to help. And, this is beyond me and nobody's spending money right now. And or I can say, no, what story do I want to write? And victims never tell good stories. They help other people tell theirs.
That is the most motivating thing I've heard all week. Thank you so much. Like that, I just love that. Thank you so much. I just feel really inspired. I think you really nailed it, because I was wondering, how do I navigate what's going on and what role I play? Just before we recorded, we were talking about a lot of people are asking about virtual facilitation. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not the expert in this. But so I can't play the hero, but I thought I can play the guide. I can get people on my show that are really great at this and start sharing that knowledge and sharing people that are really great and just helping guide people along. So I think it's nice that you differentiate the positive characters and that if you aren't the hero, what could you do as a guide to help other people?
So all that stuff is really Donald Miller is really the one who kind of formulated all of that. So he talks about it a lot, and he's the one who really kind of helped me understand those rules and the rules.
And speaking of Don, I mean, was it this week that you were meant to launch your book? Weren't you having a launch?
Yeah.
You very easily play the victim on that. I saw some of your Instagram stories, and it was quite comical. Like, we should be at this launch party, and
yeah, we were at Tuesday. We were supposed to, on St. Patrick's Day was our launch. And even our podcast, we had a podcast that was planned for Monday morning before it. That was this very like jovial, very, hey, kind of thing. And we were just like, nope, we can't do that. And we had a number, we had really good, to be honest, very good pre-orders, like very high pre-orders. So we knew that it was going to do well anyway, but it really we were like, all right, so this is a difference between, are we willing to try to like be loud and crazy about this right now and maybe hit the New York Times bestseller list? Or do we say, no, we're going to shift gears, shift our messaging, and actually move into a space where we're trying to help people more, become more of the guide? So the hero role would be that we launch the book and we like try to make it big and we make the New York Times. Or we say, actually, there's a lot of people who are hurting right now and need some help. Let's shift into the guide role and help other people succeed. And in that, not that we won't succeed as well, but we want to move into that space as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. And a nice way of sort of framing it, I think. You've also, as I saw in a recent email, you've moved your workshop, is it 2-day workshop now? It's all going virtual. So how are you managing that? Like, how do you, like, I'm looking at you. If you're listening in, there'll be this video on YouTube. I just want to say very quickly, so JJ is actually using his hands a lot. And it's a good reminder for me because I don't use them enough. I had 7 hours of Zoom calls yesterday. I don't think I use my hands at all. How are you going to transition your conference to something that's really engaging online?
Well, we're honestly just in the process. We are in the throes. So the biggest thing we're trying to figure out right now is technology, to be honest, like how to get 300 people on an event where we have coaches. So it's not just live streaming the event, but it's actually like we have coaches that are going to be coaching the 300 people in private Zoom rooms and all of that stuff. So we're figuring out, very quickly, we had a big meeting this morning, figuring out the technology of it all. But there's a different way of presenting virtually than in person. In person, you can kind of walk around and you can kind of be with people and everything. And on virtually, you have to do it just differently. You do have to have a little bit higher energy, use your hands a little bit more. You have to look in the camera, which a lot of times I'm so bad at. Like I'm looking at you on my screen versus looking in the camera.
Me too. Yeah.
Contact. You have to prepare for any kind of technology. You have to have backup upon backup upon backup. The reality is, as I've done, so part of my role for a long time at StoryBrand was actually director of private workshops. So we do private workshops where we go in and facilitate the workshop with a company up to about 20 people in the room. And sometimes we can get higher, but usually it's between about 10 and 20 people. We're getting them all on the same page, clarifying their message and helping them kind of unite in order to create a message and move forward. And I've done them, most of the ones I've done have been live. And then occasionally, if some kind of something happens or internationally, I've had to do virtual. And for me, the reality is I would say you get a better experience in person. That is just for me, I think that is the better thing. However, we're at this point where we have to pivot. Everybody has to pivot and you have to figure out what it looks like to do things online. And so, a couple just little things that I found is, getting to know people ahead of time, making a call ahead of time to get to know that, especially the leadership, and giving them a little bit of pre-work before you get there is a little bit is helpful.
Mm.
Normally, when I show up to a live workshop, like when I'm showing up to a private workshop live, I'm fine coming in cold. In fact, I don't like to know a lot about the company because from a messaging perspective, if I know a ton about them, then I'm just regurgitating their words that they've already used. So I like to come in fresh and not really know anything. I can really help them develop a clear message. And in person, that really works because you can be fast and everything. When I'm online, I do more research ahead of time. I need to start off with a better understanding of who they are and a better connection with them than just walking in the room. So that's one thing that I've discovered for me works better is the more you can do some pre-work, even sending like a video introduction of yourself to everybody who's going to be in the room, sending maybe the first instead of your first lecture that you would give, because when we do our facilitations, they're a day and a half. So it's not like you're coming in for an hour to do a little talk. It's 8 hours one day and 6 hours the next day. It's long. So sometimes sending the first video of me doing a lecture live ahead of time to get them a little more prepared helps. Making sure all the materials are downloaded, printed out, and ready to go before you start, the day before. And then for me, an intro video, sending them so they get to know me. And then also just making sure that I know more about them because I need to start with a place of stronger connection than I do when I'm in the room.
Yeah, thank you for sharing how you sort of manage both scenarios. The 2-day workshop that you run, so 8 hours on the first day, 6 hours the next. How do you maintain your energy in big groups like that? You are naturally energetic. I can see that.
Yeah.
I can hear it. I can hear it every week on the podcast. How do you maintain that level over the 2 days?
Well, there's a couple things that I've learned in my process that seem pretty simple, but these are the things that make the biggest impact for me is hydration. I have to be hydrated. I kind of pound the water ahead of time. Yes, get that water. I make sure that I've been drinking water, truthfully, a couple days ahead of time. I need to be
Couple of
hydrated.
days, right?
Yeah, just so I'm like, I know, because the day of I'm going to forget sometimes. So I just make sure like I'm well hydrated before I walk in. I finally decided to splurge on really good shoes. My shoes have to be comfortable because I'm standing the whole time. And so like I'm the kind of person who just buys the $50, $60 shoes on a regular basis and I wear them till they wear out. No big deal. But I've started having to buy more expensive shoes that I know are more comfortable because sore feet, sore legs just take your energy down completely. Obviously, good nutrition and good sleep. Like those are like, I would say those 4 things have dramatically changed the energy level. It's just good sleep, good nutrition, hydration, and good shoes. And if I can do that, that sets me up for success already. And then a few other things, I like to throw in, I try to make sure I have a couple jokes that I know will land early, get the laughs early.
Have you got a joke that you can share with us?
Well, it's all related to the presentation.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
if you actually see, like, let's say anybody on here goes to our live stream workshop or something, I say the same jokes mostly. I do have some improv depending on what the audience gives me, but there's this commercial I show of this very rugged, it's for a knife. And one of the things I ask people as I say, and the whole commercial is like this guy with a deep voice and he's, and cutting rope and roping cattle and everything. And I ask everybody, so how would you describe the person they're trying to reach in this? Somebody who owns this knife, how would you describe them? And they say rugged and, and badass. And they throw out all these things. And then I go into this joke about how I have this knife and I say, I know when you look at me, you're thinking badass, and I just kind of, you can see my head right now, but I'm like short, stocky, like I'm 5'4" and like, and I'm a writer. And so, I kind of just make that joke. And then I lean on the podium and I drop one arm down and I just go, ladies. And I just kind of do this thing. And every time
that's awesome.
Big laugh. And I just know it's going to land and I'm making fun of myself. So I'm kind of humanizing myself, endearing myself to the audience. and I get a big laugh. And then the next commercial I show is about it's a mom commercial whose kids grow up to win the Olympic medal. And I walk out of that commercial every time rubbing my eyes going, shut up, you're crying. And, kind of like rubbing my eyes. And that gets a big laugh too. So I think, and those are the first two commercials I show. And I do those jokes every time and they get a laugh every time. And I know, one, it's endearing me to them. So do a joke and you have to be careful, but I'll say this in a second, but do a joke that endears you to them, but also is funny to kind of get the mood going. But here's one thing in the StoryBrand framework, one of the things that we teach you is that you are actually not the hero of your brand. When people are telling their brand story or their company story, the company is not the hero, their customer is. And they have to play the guide to their customer's hero. So their customer is the hero of the story. And how do you position yourself as a guide to help your customer win the day? And that's what all your messaging should be. And most companies really make the mistake of making themselves the hero in a story. They are the guide. But one of the things we talk about in terms of how to position yourself as a guide is you have to do it in two ways, with empathy and authority. So every guide in every movie has empathy. They have been where the hero has been. So in Hunger Games, Haymitch has been in Hunger Games and he's guiding Katniss, who's in it. So he knows what it's like to be that way. In Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi is a Jedi and Luke Skywalker wants to be a Jedi. He's a guide. So you have to have empathy for your customer, that you've been there, you feel what they're feeling, you know what they're feeling. But you also have to have authority. You have to have been there and done that. So Haymitch has won the Hunger Games, and also Obi-Wan Kenobi has become a Jedi. So you have to have already won the day, and you're helping your customer move forward, right? So what happens is, for the sake of vulnerability and a joke, people might diminish their authority. And you have to be really careful about that, because once you diminish your authority, you're no longer their guide. So I can make jokes about my stockiness, and I can make jokes about not being a badass, and I can make a joke about being sensitive. I can never make a joke about that I don't know what I'm doing in marketing or story. So I can't that's where so people will make jokes that are self-deprecating when you're presenting. But if you're presenting and you make a self-deprecating joke about the material you're presenting, you lose authority. So you can't say, you know what, sometimes marketing is crazy and I never know what to do. I can't self-deprecate that way. I can self-deprecate my size, my weight, my sensitivity, any of that. That's vulnerability. But never, ever, ever make a joke about your inability to help them win the day, because that will remove you in the story as being the guide.
It's so true, because I often see some presenters that they'll stand up and then go, oh, I haven't been given much time but to prepare this. And straight away, they've just diminished the authority. It's like, don't ever apologize.
No, never apologize for that. You can apologize for, no, don't apologize.
Don't apologize. Yeah.
Don't apologize. A guide in a story, that's an interesting thing, because a guide in the story doesn't change. If a guide does not go on a transformational journey. They are the same at the beginning as they are at the end. So Haymitch is a drunk at the beginning of Hunger Games. He's a drunk at the end. He doesn't go on this transformational journey. He is the same person. It's the hero's job to change. So you cannot stand up and in the space where you're an authority, a speaker, presenter, and marketing or teaching, you can't do I'm kind of in this journey with you. You can't. Man, taking care of my kids and homeschooling is the worst right now, right? You can kind of go into that and go, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm tearing my hair out because I don't know how to keep, got my dog and my kids and my wife is now my coworker, You can joke about that, but you can't joke about being a presenter, being in marketing.
While you're presenting, yes.
While I'm presenting, because and now you know why. It's because it actually diminishes your authority as a guide. And they're not looking for another hero. You are not the hero of the story. You are the guide.
Thank you. Thank you so much for clarifying between the hero and the guide. Because I think, particularly as first-time facilitators, I know when I started facilitating 5 or 6 years ago, I thought that I had to be the hero.
Yeah.
I had to go in, I had to be funny, I had to be professional, I had to know all the content and all of that. What I've seen that shift now is I am now playing the role of guide. And what that does is now I can get a good night's sleep the night before because I'm not so worked up on how I'm bringing myself. It's all about how do I get the best out of the people in the room. And I think that's the shift that needs to happen. When you're a first time facilitator, it's all about perfection and me being great. When you turn into guide, it's putting the focus on the group. And in that instance, it's like, well, what can I do to support them? And the pressure is off.
Yes. And it even changes the way you walk on stage. So a lot of people will walk on stage and go, "Hi, my name is, and I'm here from, and I've got," and and they start introducing themselves. If you have been given a stage, you already have authority. You do not need to explain why you're there. So you need to walk on stage and start with it. So how a good story works is there's 7 elements of a story, really. There's a character who wants something, who encounters a problem, who then meets a guide, who gives them a plan that calls them to action. And that story, if they take it, accept or reject that call to action, if they accept it, it ends in success. If they reject it, it ends in failure. That's every story. Character with a problem who meets a guide, plan, who gives them a plan, calls them to action, and we know the results, success or failure. So when you understand that and you start understanding your character is the hero of the story, your customer or your audience is the hero of the story, you identify what is it that the audience wants out of this talk? What is it that they want in this moment? And what is the problem that's going to get in the way of them getting that? And that's how you start the introduction. You literally, you get up and for me, I'll get up at a conference of thousands of people and I say, I know the reason you're here is because you want to grow your business. But the problem is your marketing is not communicating clearly in a way that engages customers. And you've probably spent thousands of dollars on ad agencies and time and money on words that you feel like you're just throwing against the wall and seeing what's going to stick. And the reality is there is a way to go forward. There is hope. The hope is story. And once you understand how story works, then you're going to be able to communicate more clearly and get more customers. So what I just did there is a truncated version of that story. I identified what the character wants. Then I really ramped up the problem. I talked about time and money and energy wasted on marketing. And then I gave a clear vision of what the future could look like, what success looks like. So when you do this, you're going to be able to connect with customers more, grow your business. So instead of getting up, doing that, you can either get up and start with what the character wants. You can start with, here, I know why everybody's in this room. And just literally say, you're here because you want to be top. You want to be top in your industry. Or you're here because you want to learn how to be a better teacher. Or you're here because... So you can start with that, and then immediately go into the problem. Or you can just start with the problem. You can literally say, we have a huge problem. Is that the customer's problem is, or your audience's problem is, because the only reason they're going to listen to you in this presentation is because you're going to solve a problem for them. We classify brands, teachers, any company really, in our brains by the problem that they solve. We think that we go, oh yeah, Tylenol and Tums, and we have all these big brands out there. But literally, if I was to say to you, oh man, I have a stomach ache, you would be able to say, oh, I have Tums, or you should take Pepto. If I say I have a headache, you say, well, here's some Tylenol or Advil. We identify the brand by the problem it solves. We don't think about the brand outside of the problem. So when you get up on stage and you begin talking about your audience or your customer's problem, and you just ramp it up and you say, here's the problem, but it's worse than that. It's this, and it's worse than that. It's this. And you would not believe how bad it's going to get. It's this, this, this. And then you say, but there is a way forward, right? So that is, you have to invite customers or audiences into a story. And when you do that and they start going, yes, yes, yes. And then you go, boom, here's the Tylenol. It's me, or it's my ideas, or it's my product. Right? So don't get up. I would say, do not ever get up on stage and go, hi, my name is da-da-da. And
yes.
I have a PhD and da-da-da. You don't do that. You start with a problem. And once you identify the problem, you speak it, ramp it up. Now people have a reason to listen to you. Don't give them your credentials. They don't care about your credentials. They care that you can fix their problems.
Thank you so much. That's been often a pet peeve is that the facilitators or speakers get up there and they'll show all these photos about their journey and it's like, oh, tapped out. But I think what I love about you is what you just said is stating the problem, because I think a lot of the time we always go straight into solution without really defining the problem up front. We might assume that the audience knows what the problem is, but we don't really make it explicit. No.
Like if you ever somebody tell a boring story, they're like, yeah, so it's the craziest thing happened. I went to the beach today and I laid out. And then I watched the waves and there was like volleyball going on. I mean, like they'll just start saying things. And what we're doing is we're waiting for them to tell us, like, you want to say, and then like a tsunami came, or then,
yes.
It came out of the ocean. There needs to be a problem for the story to actually matter or be good. And so it's the same with our messaging and the way that we facilitate and teach. Is if we don't start out with a problem, nobody knows why they need to listen to the rest of what we're about to say.
Awesome. That's really great. Thank you so much for sharing that framework. When you were sort of talking about the problem and what StoryBrand does, I just felt like saying, take my money. It was just, just so strong. And I think we'll definitely link to the framework and your new book in the show notes, because I think it's we've got a lot of facilitators that listen, probably 50% that work internally, 50% that have their own business. And even for those that work internally, I've just come out of corporate. A lot of the time we're having to sell these internal programs to us, to stakeholders, and make it worth their time to attend. But I think we're like, hey, here's a great program, but we don't often define the problem and why you need it. I think that's really compelling.
And if you, for internal, what I would really say is, so when you're walking up to a cold audience, right, who doesn't really know you, you really want to start with the problem. Like, let's just nail that. Let's start with the problem. But from an internal perspective, what you want to say is start with what the customer wants, what the character wants. So internally, you would say something like, hey, I know we're all looking for a way to save time in whatever, when it comes to, let's say, we're looking to, let's start with HR benefits, right? So say something like, I know everybody here is looking for a more effective way of taking care of their family, both financially and time-wise. You want a more effective way to understand how to process your benefits so that you can take care of your family. We all want to take care of our families. So you position what they want, and then you say, but the problem is, and then you go into what is the problem that this training is going to solve, right? So you say, but the problem is we have this old antiquated system that actually just wastes your time, right? So, and wastes your energy. So now you're ramping up, like there's a thing that's getting in the way of what you want. And then you position the training as the solution. Well, you come in as the guide. So you say, I get it. I'm the same way too. Empathy and authority. I understand. I'm the same way. In fact, my two kids, I had such a hard time going to the doctor last week because our HR stuff was not right. So I get it. But I've also researched a ton of different options, and I really discovered that this is going to save us time and money. Then you give them a plan. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to show you how the training works. We're going to get everybody signed up. And then when you're done, you're going to be able to save time and money in this process. Call to action. All you need to do is sign up for next Tuesday and be there. And when you do, now we give success and failure. When you do, you're going to stop being frustrated by it. You're going to be able to take care of your family better. You're not going to have to worry about, do I owe money or not? And you're going to be able to get on with your life in a better way. So you have to identify, what do they want? What gets in the way of that? I get it. Here's our plan. Here's what you have to do to solve it. And this is what life looks like if you don't. And this is what life looks like if you do.
Oh, wow. You and Don often joke that in every episode, you're getting a $10,000 consulting call for free. I feel like that's just happened. We had it from the flip chart. She was asking a question about how, because she's trying to work with not-for-profits and get them used to remote learning. And so she's like, how could you ask JJ how to do that? And I think you've just answered that in the way that you phrase that conversation. And look, this is the problem right now. And I think I'm going to map that back to your framework. And
even just like, let's just take one piece. You identify the problem. So many nonprofits, what they want is, so many nonprofits are looking for the same great training that's available for every other big company out there. The problem is they don't have the internal resources or the money, and which makes it, now ramp it up, which makes it so frustrating because you feel like you have to spend $10 million on training that may or may not work, that could go to the people you're working with. I get this.
Amazing.
I understand. So remote training. So here's how we fix that. We give you access to the experts, but we do it remotely. So you can do it at your own home at a cheaper price, at a better data, with as many people as you want. When you sign up, this is what this looks like. If you don't do this, then you're missing out on so many great opportunities. But if you do, then you're going to get access to the best training at a price that you can afford and actually get back to helping the people that you came to serve.
Bravo. Look at you. You are in absolutely the right job. I think that was amazing. I can see everything, the improv, the story. I mean, the fact that you've done this for 4.5 years, you could probably get any industry and do this. What a superpower. That's just amazing.
The framework. I mean, it's because I have this framework that tells me what to say, right? So gives me guide rails. And when we teach people the StoryBrand framework, really it's all about for me, these are the guide rails. So you have to understand, like when you're starting to create messaging or you get up on stage, don't go outside of this box. This is what you have to say. Within it, you have a lot of creativity. But don't start with the character one, go to the problem, position yourself as the guide. All of those things are there. And so now I really can and sometimes I practice in the grocery store. Like I'll walk up to the back and I'll just start with, well, what's the problem that Oreos solve? And how do I, and really just begin to articulate those kind of things. And once you get to that size, that's the thing is a lot of us are looking at, say, Nike or Coca-Cola or Oreos that are these big things, and we're trying to copy what they're doing.
Yeah.
Don't copy what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They're brands, they're big brands, and there's a difference between branding and marketing. Mm-hmm. Branding is how you make people feel, and that's really once you get to that level. Coca-Cola they don't need to explain to people who they are. They need to make people feel something. Mm-hmm. So they just live in the branding space. But marketing is what you do, how you make people's life better, and how they get it. Mm-hmm. That's really all it is. And so most of us go to this we need to have beautiful websites and we need to be flashy in our presentation. And those things are fine at second level, next level. Yeah. But most people have missed the marketing. Yeah. They know how to explain clearly what you do, how you make people's life better, and how you get it. Yeah. And when you can master that through this framework, we teach you how to do that through the StoryBrand framework. Then later you can have beautiful commercials and beautiful website and all that stuff and fancy presentations that does all the tricks. But if you miss that first part, you miss out on it all.
Yeah, absolutely agree. JJ, thank you so much for your time today. I just can't believe how much value you've dropped in the last sort of 50 minutes. I'm so grateful for this. If listeners would like to reach out, attend a virtual workshop, grab your book, where should we send them?
So our virtual workshops are at storybrand.com. And so they can go there and just kind of see what we offer. We also have what's called Business Made Simple University, bmsu.com. But and we offer all our online courses. So the StoryBrand course, and then a marketing course, which is what my book was. The book is called Marketing Made Simple. And there's a Marketing Made Simple course there. So we teach people how to create a clear message through story, and then how to create a sales funnel, basically out of that message. And so those are at Business Made Simple. So you can do the full kind of online course. Those are not live, but they're videos with workbooks and everything. And that's at businessmadesimple.com. Or if you want to attend one of the live workshops, live streaming right now. But when we do go back to live, it'll be at the same place, which is at storybrand.com.
Amazing. And at that Business Made Simple, it's tremendous value, I believe. I think there's no better time actually while you're in self-isolation to do programs like this on demand, get things fixed, things in your business or in your internal comms. I think now's the time to work on that sort of stuff.
This is what my book, Marketing Made Simple, really is. Literally, how do you connect with people when you can't see them face to face? Through marketing. How do you stay connected with your customers through sales funnel, not when you can't see them face to face? And it's crazy that it came out right now because that's where we're at. And people that have a sales funnel are the people that are going to survive, to be honest.
Yep. Timing's perfect. So we're going to release this episode really soon, I think, just to get the message out and promote your awesome book while we can. JJ, I really appreciate your time and I hope you enjoy the rest of your hours and days. Who knows how long we'll be in our houses for, but I appreciate you dialing in.
No problem. Thanks
awesome.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much